My car window just shattered. I shouted, staring at the trash can lying on the gravel, glass everywhere. My daughter-in-law stood on the porch, breathing hard, eyes full of rage. Behind her, my son looked pale, his fists clenched. 20 minutes later, both of them would wish they'd never stepped foot on my property. 3 weeks earlier, I'd sold the land that carried 45 years of my sweat and sacrifice, Henderson Farm. The place where my late husband, Robert, and I raised cattle, corn, and one very spoiled son. The offer was $850,000, more than enough for a comfortable retirement. I didn't know my son, Adam, had already started counting it as his inheritance. The fight started when he showed up uninvited, as usual, pounding on my door like a bill collector. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, brushing past me into the kitchen. "Adam, you don't just barge into my home demanding talks," I said, pouring myself coffee. "You ask first." His wife, Jessica, followed, looking like she'd just walked off a catalog cover, perfect hair, perfect clothes, and a tone sharp enough to cut glass. "We heard you sold the farm." "Without even telling us." I took a slow sip. "That's right. Highland Properties. Last Monday. Got a fair deal." Jessica scoffed. "Without discussing it with family." "This land is Adam's heritage." "Heritage?" I raised a brow. "You complain about the smell every time you visit." Adam shifted awkwardly. "It's not about that, Mom. We had plans." "Plans?" He pulled out his phone, showing me some fancy spreadsheet. Jessica jumped in, "We talked to a financial advisor. We could have turned the property into a family development." "You sold too soon." "You mean I sold my land for my reasons," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You two never lifted a finger to work this farm. You just assumed I'd die and leave it to you." "That's not fair," Adam snapped. "We have bills, kids, college." "Sounds like a personal problem," I interrupted. Jessica stood up so fast her chair clattered back. "You selfish old woman. We were counting on that money." I set my cup down, leaned forward, and looked her straight in the eye. "Then you were counting on something that never belonged to you." Adam slammed his hand on the table. "We're not giving up on this, Mom. That money belongs in this family." I smiled, slow, deliberate, the kind that had once made him clean his room without a word. "You just threatened your mother in her own kitchen. Think very carefully about your next move." They stormed out, the screen door nearly flying off its hinges. I sat back down, calm as ever, and started making a list, because at 68, I'd learned that when someone threatens you, words aren't enough. You prepare. The next morning, the phone rang at 6. "Mom," Adam said, fake sweet, "about yesterday, I might have overreacted. Why don't you come for dinner tonight? Jessica's making her famous pot roast." I laughed. "The one she burns every time." "I'll pass. Got bridge with the girls." "Cancel it. This is important family business." That tone, commanding, entitled. Adam, I said coldly, the sale is done. The money's mine. End of discussion. He hung up. By 8, my neighbor, Walter, was on my porch, tablet in hand. You need to see this, he said. Jessica had posted on Facebook, I'm worried about my mother-in-law, Evelyn Henderson. She's been making strange financial decisions and may not be mentally well. We just want to get her help before it's too late. My jaw tightened. 15 comments already, people I'd known for decades, offering sympathy. Walter, I said, hand me your phone. What are you? Fixing a problem. I typed, hi, everyone. This is Evelyn. My daughter-in-law's concern is touching, but unnecessary. I sold my land, by choice, and I'm perfectly sane. The only ones acting irrationally are the people demanding money they didn't earn. I was evaluated last week by Dr. Langley, who confirmed I'm in excellent health. Thanks for the unsolicited concern. Posted. 10 minutes later, the tide turned. My friends flooded the thread, defending me, reminding everyone how I'd run that farm alone for decades. My phone rang. It was Dr. Langley. Evelyn, I saw the post. If anyone questions your competency, I've got documentation. Keep it handy, Doc, I said. Something tells me I'll need it. When I hung up, a message popped up from an unknown number. Your son owes $75,000. Payment due Friday. Thought you should know. I showed Walter. His face went pale. Loan sharks, he whispered. Explains the desperation, I said. And the trash can through my car window. By 10, Jessica was back, this time with a social worker. Mrs. Henderson, I'm Carla with Adult Protective Services. Your daughter-in-law called. She's concerned about your mental health. I smiled sweetly. I bet she is. Carla hesitated. She mentioned impulsive financial behavior. Would selling my own property for a fair price qualify as impulsive? I asked. Carla's eyes flicked toward Jessica, who was pretending concern while checking her nails. I've got my doctor's note, my bank statements, and 45 years of tax records, I said, stepping forward. Now, if you're done wasting taxpayer money, I've got a broken car window to replace. Jessica's fake smile faltered. For the first time, she looked nervous. As they walked off, Walter muttered, "You just declared war." They started it, I said, locking my door behind me. I'm just finishing it, with receipts. I see, I said, folding my arms. And based on a phone call from someone who visits me maybe 6 times a year, you decided a home visit was necessary. Carla Simmons from Adult Protective Services had the decency to look uncomfortable. Mrs. Henderson, I'm required to follow up on all reports. But between you and me, you seem perfectly lucid. That's because I am perfectly lucid, I said, my voice cool. Unlike some people, I don't think it's unstable to refuse to hand over my life savings to cover someone else's gambling debts. Jessica's face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, don't play innocent. I pulled out my phone and handed it to Carla. $75,000 ring a bell. Because I got a very interesting text this morning about Adam's debts. Carla glanced between us like she was watching a tennis match she didn't want tickets to. Mrs. Henderson, would you mind if I asked you a few standard questions? By all means. For the next 10 minutes, she ran through the mental competency checklist, dates, names, presidents, math. It was almost insulting. I'd balanced farm accounts through 3 recessions. This was child's play. When she finished, Carla tucked her clipboard under her arm. You're clearly in full control of your faculties. I'll note that this appears to be a family financial conflict, not a competency issue. Jessica's composure cracked. This is ridiculous. She's being manipulated by strangers who want her money. That farm should have stayed in the family. Carla straightened. Mrs. Henderson is legally entitled to sell her property and manage her assets as she chooses. Unless a court declares her incompetent, no one has any claim to her money. When they finally left, I didn't waste time feeling sorry for myself. I called my lawyer, Patricia Wells, who'd handled our family's legal affairs since Robert and I bought the farm. Patricia wasn't one to sugarcoat things. Evelyn, based on what you've told me, we need to meet this afternoon, she said. Bring any proof, texts, screenshots, photos. Everything. 2 hours later, I was sitting in her office, a thick folder on the table between us, Jessica's Facebook post, the threatening text about the gambling debt, photos of the car parked outside my house. They're following a playbook, Patricia said, flipping through the evidence. First, they build a narrative, social media concern, calls to your doctor, now APS. Next, they'll try to find witnesses who'll say you've been acting confused or forgetful. But I haven't, I protested. Doesn't matter. Memory is malleable. A few leading questions and suddenly you've been acting strange for months. So what do we do? I'm recommending a full psychological evaluation, Patricia said. Not because you need it, but because we'll need airtight documentation of your competency before they twist the truth any further. Fine. How soon? Dr. Sarah Chen. Tomorrow morning. She specializes in these evaluations. Her reports hold up in court. Book it, I said. And start documenting everything. Threats, calls, posts, every last attempt to control me. Patricia hesitated. Evelyn, if Adam's really in debt to dangerous people, this could escalate. Then I'll be ready for whatever comes next. That night, I sat on my porch with Robert's old shotgun across my lap. The farm was gone, but my instincts weren't. Protecting myself from my own family felt worse than guarding chickens from coyotes, but the principle was the same. My phone buzzed. Adam. Mom, we need to talk. This has gone too far. Can I come over? I stared at the screen before replying. No. Any further communication goes through my lawyer. A pause, then, you're making a big mistake. I looked out across the dark field where Highland Meadows signs marked the future site of luxury homes. No, Adam, I murmured. The mistake was thinking you could threaten your mother and get away with it. The next morning, Dr. Chen's evaluation confirmed what I already knew. Patient demonstrates exceptional cognitive function, clear reasoning, and sound judgment. Patricia smiled as she read the report. "Adam's not going to like this," she said. "At my age, disappointing my son isn't my biggest worry," I replied. Patricia slid a manila envelope across the desk. "This arrived by courier an hour ago." Inside was a petition for guardianship. Adam Henderson was requesting full legal control over my finances and medical decisions. The petition claimed I was mentally unstable and being exploited by outsiders. "They filed for an emergency hearing next Friday," Patricia said grimly. "And there's a temporary restraining order preventing you from making any financial transactions over $5,000 until then." I placed the papers down carefully. "They're trying to freeze me out. Control the money so I can't fight back." Patricia nodded. "It's a smart trap." "Smart," I said, "but sloppy." "How so?" "They think I'm playing defense." "I'm not." I opened my folder. "I've been collecting everything: recordings, texts, bank data, gambling receipts. Adam doesn't just owe $75,000. He's nearly $200,000 in the hole." Patricia's eyebrows rose. "That makes this more than greed. That's survival." "Exactly," I said. "And desperate people make mistakes." We spent hours sorting evidence: photos of Adam at casinos, bank statements showing overdue mortgages, copies of his threatening texts. Patricia was impressed. "You've been busy." 45 years running a farm taught me one thing: you solve problems before they trample you." Before I left, Patricia said, "There's something else. A private investigator contacted me. Said he'd been hired to follow you but didn't realize the job involved spying on a senior woman for her own family. He quit, and told me Jessica paid him in cash." I smiled coldly. "Good. Let's hire him ourselves." "Are you sure?" Patricia asked. "At this point, the only thing I'm sure of is that I'm done playing nice." I drove home feeling more alive than I had in years. The woman they thought they could corner had been reborn: steel spine, steady hands, and a plan. The same black sedan was still parked across the street. I waved at it this time. Let them watch. Let them think they're winning. By the time I found my back door ajar that afternoon, I wasn't surprised. Footprints tracked mud across the kitchen. On the table lay a row of photographs: me at the bank, at Patricia's office, at Dr. Chen's clinic, with a handwritten note: "Stop fighting this, Mom. You're only making it worse. Be smart for once." I read it twice, then laughed softly. Instead of calling the police, I called a security company and ordered a full surveillance setup: night vision, motion sensors, automatic cloud uploads. The works. When the installer asked, "Expecting trouble, ma'am?" I smiled. Just preparing for guests who don't know how to knock. That evening, I visited my old friend Ruby Alvarez, who knew everyone worth knowing in 3 counties. Evelyn Henderson, she said, setting down her coffee. About time you came to me. I hear you've got yourself a family problem. Nothing I can't handle, I said. But Ruby, I need information. And I need it fast. Ruby grinned. Then you came to the right woman. Because this war wasn't over. And I'd learned long ago, when people push a Henderson, she pushes back twice as hard. I need everything you can dig up on Adam and Jessica's finances, I told Ruby. Debts, spending habits, who they owe, all of it, and I need it fast. Ruby's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Honey, you came to the right woman. Give me 48 hours. Sunday evening, she called back, her voice bubbling with the thrill of a good find. Evelyn, those kids of yours are in trouble up to their necks. Adam's got gambling debts from one end of the state to the other, and Jessica's been burning through credit cards like it's a sport. How much? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Near as I can figure, around 200,000. The house is mortgaged to the hilt, both cars are financed, and they've got at least 6 cards maxed out. 200,000. Even expecting bad news, the number hit hard. It gets worse, Ruby said quietly. Adam's been borrowing from the kind of people who don't send polite reminders when payments are late. That explained the desperation. They weren't just greedy, they were cornered. By Monday morning, things took another turn. Patricia called me at 7 sharp, her tone clipped. Evelyn, you need to get down here immediately. Someone tried to break into my office last night. I found her standing with a police officer amid scattered files. They were looking for your file, she said. Didn't take anything, but they photographed documents, probably hoping to find something they could twist against you in court. Did they find anything useful? Patricia's lips curved into a bitter smile. That's the funny part. They snapped photos of Dr. Chen's report and your medical records, proof you're perfectly competent. If they use any of that, they'll shoot themselves in the foot. The officer, a young man named Thompson, looked up from his notes. Mrs. Henderson, your lawyer mentioned you might have an idea who could be behind this. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Adam. Mom, he said, his voice too calm. I think we should meet. This whole court thing's getting out of hand. Officer Thompson mouthed, keep him talking. Is that right, Adam? Yeah. Family shouldn't be fighting like this. Maybe we can work something out. What kind of something? Well, he said after a pause, you don't really need all that money. What are you going to do with $800,000? You could give me and Jessica enough to pay off our debts, and everyone would be happy. How much is enough? 300,000, he said, like it was a reasonable grocery request. That'd leave you plenty for retirement. 300,000, I repeated softly. And if I say no? A pause. Mom, you don't want this to go to court. Things might come out, things about Dad's death. People might find it odd that he passed right before the property value tripled. The implication landed like a gut punch. My own son was threatening to paint me as his father's killer. Adam, I said, keeping my voice steady, are you threatening me? I'm just saying courts can get messy. Family history, misunderstandings, it can look bad to people who don't know the real story. And where do you want to have this little talk? The old barn. Tonight, 8 o'clock. Private. No interruptions. When the call ended, Officer Thompson looked grim. That's a setup, Mrs. Henderson. Isolated location, vague invitation, I don't like it. Neither do I, Patricia said. You can't meet him alone. Don't worry, I told them. I have a better idea. That night, when Adam pulled up to my house, he was expecting an old woman ready to fold. What he found was someone who'd spent a lifetime fighting droughts, taxes, and men who underestimated her. Mom, glad you decided to be reasonable, he said, walking in like he still owned the place. Sit down, Adam, I said, gesturing to the kitchen table, the same table where I'd fed him breakfast every day of his childhood. Let's talk. What he didn't know was that every word was being recorded by the new security cameras. I've got the guardianship papers ready, he said, pulling out a folder. But we don't have to file them if you'll be sensible. Define sensible. Sign over power of attorney. Give me access to the money. In return, I'll drop the competency case. We can go back to being a family. I looked at him for a long moment. And if I refuse? He smirked. Then we go to court and you lose. I've got witnesses, store clerks, neighbors, all ready to say you've been acting confused. Even if you win once, I'll keep filing petitions. Every 6 months, every year, until you give up. You can't outlast me. At 68, I'd learned to control my temper. But that day, I felt something hard and cold settle inside me. What exactly do you want, Adam? What's mine? What should have been mine all along? Your father and I worked for everything we had. You never lifted a finger for that land. I shouldn't have to. I'm family. No, Adam. You're entitled to nothing you didn't earn. His face twisted. You selfish old woman. You'd rather see your own son ruined than share money you'll never spend. I'd rather see my son learn responsibility than watch him sink deeper into the hole he dug. He stood, knocking over his chair. Fine. We'll do this the hard way. He dialed a number. Jessica. Yeah, she's being stubborn. Activate Plan B. Plan B? I asked. He smiled. You'll find out soon enough. After he stormed out, I checked the footage. Every threat, every admission, captured in perfect clarity. At 10:30, the phone rang again. Jessica. Evelyn, she said sweetly, we're very disappointed in your decision. We'd hoped to keep things quiet, but since you've forced our hand, we'll have to take other measures. What kind of measures? Well, for starters, people might start hearing about your mental decline. Or maybe how conveniently Robert passed before the farm's sale. You know how small towns talk. Are you threatening to ruin me? Oh, no, she said. Just informing you that Adam's creditors are aware of his family situation. They can be persuasive about collecting debts. I hung up, took a deep breath, and called Patricia. Evelyn, it's nearly midnight, she said groggily. I need you to set up a trust. First thing tomorrow. What kind of trust? The kind that puts every penny beyond Adam's reach, no matter what happens to me. She hesitated. Are you all right? You sound different. I'm not scared, Patricia. I'm angry. And when I get angry, I get resourceful. Tuesday morning proved how far Adam and Jessica were willing to go. By 8, half the town had heard that I was senile, manipulative, and possibly a murderer. Walter Green knocked on my door, hat in hand. Evelyn, there's some ugly talk going round. Let me guess, I said. I'm losing my mind, hoarding money, and maybe poison my husband. He looked startled. How did you? Because I know exactly who's spreading it. Calls came all morning, old friends pretending concern, neighbors fishing for details, the church secretary offering to help with my finances. Small-town gossip spreads faster than fire and burns just as hot. But I'd learned long ago, the best defense is offense. I called Ruby. Remember that research you did? Time to make it public. Evelyn, she said, once this starts, there's no stopping it. I'm counting on that. By mid-afternoon, the story had flipped. Word spread about Adam's gambling debts, Jessica's reckless spending, and their plan to steal from me. Sympathy drained away from them faster than a leaky faucet. At 4, Dr. Langley called. Evelyn, I've had people asking about your mental health. I told them the truth, you're sharper than most 50-year-olds. But something about this feels coordinated. It is, I said. Family greed, doctor. Nothing more. That evening, Adam called again, his voice shaky now. Mom, people are saying awful things about us. Lies about our finances, about gambling. You have to stop it. I can't control what people say, son. This is your fault. You're ruining our reputation. No, Adam, I said softly. You ruined your own reputation the moment you threatened your mother. There was silence on the line, then a click. I set the phone down and smiled faintly. My late husband used to say, you can't plant poison and expect flowers. Adam and Jessica had just learned that lesson the hard way. Family doesn't break into each other's homes. Family doesn't hire private investigators. Family doesn't send thugs to threaten their own mother. Evelyn's voice shook, but her eyes were steel. There was silence on the other end of the line before Adam finally spoke. His voice had turned sharp, cold. Fine. You want to play hardball, Mom? Game on. The call ended, and Evelyn knew, the real war had just begun. Wednesday morning, the first strike hit. She found her car tires slashed, and the word thief spray-painted across her garage door in bright red. She was scrubbing it off when Walter Green, her longtime neighbor and friend, arrived for his morning check-in. Evelyn, this has gone way too far. You need to call the police. Already did, she said, holding up her phone. Officer Thompson is on his way. And Walter, my cameras caught everything. Before he could answer, a black pickup rolled up the driveway. Two large men stepped out, neither looked the type to be selling cookies. Mrs. Henderson, the taller one, called out. We need to have a conversation. Walter moved in front of her, but Evelyn placed a steady hand on his arm. Gentlemen, this is private property. State your business or leave. This is family business, the man said smoothly. Adam Henderson owes us money, and we understand his mother has the means to help. I don't know anything about my son's debts, Evelyn replied evenly. And I'm not responsible for paying them. The second man smiled thinly. Ma'am, family is family. Sometimes elderly parents need help understanding their obligations. Are you threatening me? Evelyn asked, her voice sharp. We're just explaining the situation. Adam owes 75 grand. Interest's adding up fast. We figure a loving mother wouldn't want her boy getting hurt over money she could easily cover. Walter's phone was already in his hand. I'm calling the police. Go ahead, the first man said, unmoved. We're just talking. What they didn't realize was that every second of this conversation was being recorded, and Officer Thompson was already en route. When they left, Evelyn sat calmly on her porch, the morning air cool against her skin. She didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. Adam had made his move, and she would make hers. By the time Officer Thompson arrived, she had the footage ready, the threats, the damage, and even the call recording from Adam the night before. Mrs. Henderson, he said, after watching the evidence. We could arrest your son today for criminal intimidation. Not yet, Evelyn replied quietly. Let's see how far he's willing to dig. Sometimes, it's best to let a fool finish burying himself. Thursday morning, Evelyn walked into court dressed in her best navy suit. Her hair was perfectly pinned, her briefcase full of documents and truths that would end this madness. Judge Harrison was an old-school man, respected and sharp. He didn't like manipulators, especially within families. Adam and Jessica sat with their lawyer, a slick city type named Richard Ashford. They looked smug, confident. Patricia Wells leaned close to Evelyn. You sure about this approach? It's risky. Evelyn smiled faintly. Patricia, I've lived through droughts, debt, and losing Robert. This is just another storm. Ashford began. He painted Evelyn as a confused, paranoid woman in mental decline, a poor old widow incapable of handling her affairs. Witness after witness took the stand, clerks claiming she'd acted strangely, neighbors saying she seemed unstable, even a handwriting expert, who insisted her signatures showed signs of dementia. It was all lies. But well-rehearsed lies. Then Patricia stood. Calm, composed, lethal. Your Honor, she said, this entire petition is a performance, meant to hide the truth. Adam Henderson is drowning in gambling debt, and he's trying to seize his mother's money to save himself. Ashford shot up. Objection. Overruled, Judge Harrison said. Continue. Piece by piece, Patricia dismantled their web. The clerks admitted they'd been paid for testimony. The neighbors confessed they hadn't actually seen anything. Adam told them what to say. The handwriting expert. A fraud with 3 disciplinary strikes. Then Patricia dropped the hammer. Your Honor, I call Detective Robert Collins to the stand. Adam's face went pale. Jessica gripped his arm. Detective Collins testified clearly. Adam Henderson is under active investigation for check fraud, identity theft, and attempted extortion. 3 weeks ago, he tried to forge his mother's signature to access her accounts. He also hired known criminals to threaten her at home. The courtroom erupted. Ashford yelled objections. Adam shouted, "She's lying. She's crazy." Judge Harrison slammed his gavel. Order. Collins continued. We have video and audio evidence corroborating Mrs. Henderson's claims. Adam snapped. You think you can take everything from me? That money's mine. I'm her son, I deserve it. Mr. Henderson, the judge said icily, are you admitting this petition was about controlling your mother's finances? Ashford tried to hush him, but Adam shouted over him. Yes. She's ruining us. She doesn't care about family. That money should stay with family, not some company she's selling to. Silence. Patricia turned to the judge. Your Honor, I think the motive has just made itself clear. Judge Harrison nodded slowly. Indeed. Petition dismissed. Mr. Henderson, you are ordered to cease all contact with your mother. And given this testimony, I'm referring this to the district attorney for criminal review. The bailiffs moved in as Adam continued to yell. Jessica buried her face in her hands. Evelyn sat perfectly still, calm, victorious. 3 days later, Walter brought over the newspaper. You'll want to see this, Evelyn. The front page headline read, Local Families' Greed Exposed in Court. The story laid everything bare, Adam's gambling, the threats, the fraud, the meltdown in court. Evelyn folded the paper. Well, I guess that settles who really lost everything. Her phone rang all morning, friends apologizing, neighbors offering support, even Pastor Williams calling. Evelyn, he said gently, forgiveness is part of healing. I've forgiven him, she said quietly. But I haven't forgotten. Forgiveness doesn't mean foolishness. Within a week, the DA's office filed charges. Adam faced fraud and extortion. Jessica was charged as an accomplice. Their house was seized, cars repossessed, and the loan sharks were cooperating, eager to turn on Adam. That afternoon, Ruby Alvarez stopped by, her sharp eyes gleaming. Honey, they're done. No one in this town will touch them. I heard they're moving back to Jessica's folks in Ohio. That's probably for the best, Evelyn said. Ruby tilted her head. How'd you have all that evidence lined up? 45 years on a farm teaches you to plan for the worst, Evelyn said. And to know your enemy. That evening, there was a knock. Jessica stood on the porch, pale, eyes red. "Evelyn, please. Just 5 minutes." Against her better judgment, Evelyn let her in. Jessica sat at the table, trembling. "It was all Adam's idea," she said. "The petition, the witnesses, everything. I just wanted it to stop. I was scared." "You were scared enough to steal from me?" Evelyn asked. Jessica's voice cracked. "I know how it sounds. But we were desperate. I'm sorry, for everything." Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. "Are you sorry for trying to have me declared incompetent? For the break-in? For the threats? Or just sorry because you got caught?" Jessica's tears came hard. "All of it. Please, Evelyn. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." Evelyn's tone softened, just barely. "Then testify. Tell the truth at Adam's trial. That's the only apology that means anything." Jessica nodded through her tears. "I will." Evelyn stood and opened the door. "Good. Then maybe we can both start healing." As Jessica walked away, Evelyn stepped onto her porch, the evening breeze cool and clean. For the first time in months, the weight lifted. She'd lost a son, but found her strength. And at 68, Evelyn Henderson finally understood, peace isn't something you're given. It's something you fight for, and win. The question stopped Jessica's tears cold. "What?" she whispered. "The prosecutor wants Adam to pay for what he did," Evelyn said evenly. "Your testimony, about his threats, his planning, his manipulation of evidence, would be a great help to their case." "I can't testify against my husband," Jessica said quickly. "Even though he's willing to let you take the fall for the conspiracy charges." Jessica froze. "What do you mean?" "Adam's lawyer is arguing that you masterminded the entire scheme," Evelyn said quietly. "That you manipulated him into trying to steal from me. According to his version, you're the villain." Jessica's face went pale. "He wouldn't do that." "Jessica," Evelyn said softly, "the man who tried to destroy his own mother for gambling money won't hesitate to throw you under the bus to save himself. Why would you be any different?" The look of betrayal that flickered across Jessica's face was almost painful to watch. Almost. After she left, Evelyn sat in silence, staring at the cooling cup of coffee on her kitchen table. Family. Loyalty. Greed. She'd learned the price of all three. Adam had burned every bridge, his marriage, his reputation, his freedom, all for money he never earned and never respected. The phone rang. "Patricia," she answered. "Evelyn, I have news." The prosecutor offered Adam a plea deal. "What kind of deal?" 18 months in prison, full restitution for your legal costs, and a permanent restraining order. He also has to make a public statement admitting you were never mentally incompetent and that the petition was fraudulent. And if he refuses, then he goes to trial, Patricia said. If convicted, he could face up to 10 years. Evelyn thought for a moment. "What do you think I should do?" "Take the deal," Patricia said. "It gives you everything you wanted, justice, peace, and protection. Then that's what we'll do, Evelyn said. 6 months later, she sat on the porch of her new home, a quiet 5-acre property just outside town. She read the morning paper, eyes catching the headline about Adam Henderson's release. He'd served 8 months of his sentence before being paroled for good behavior. The article mentioned his divorce and his move to Ohio. Evelyn felt neither joy nor sorrow, only closure. Adam had made his choices, now he was living with the consequences. For Evelyn, life had moved forward. She'd learned that sometimes the best revenge is refusing to play the victim. 1 year later, Thanksgiving looked different. Her table was surrounded not by blood family, but chosen family: Walter Green, her loyal neighbor, Ruby Alvarez and her grandson, Dr. Langley and his wife, Patricia Wells, and Detective Robert Collins, who'd become more of a friend than she'd expected. As they cleared dishes, Ruby grinned. "Evelyn, do you ever regret how things turned out with Adam?" It was a question she'd been asked often, by friends, by Pastor Williams, even by Dr. Sarah Chen, the therapist who'd helped her process the pain of her son's betrayal. "I regret that Adam chose greed over love," Evelyn said. "That he let gambling destroy everything good in his life. But do I regret standing up for myself? Not once." Dr. Langley leaned forward. "What about forgiveness? Some people think you were too hard on him." Evelyn smiled faintly. "I've forgiven him, for being weak, for disappointing me. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It doesn't mean opening the door for another wound." Detective Collins raised his glass. "To Evelyn Henderson, who proved that farm women are tougher than they look." Walter chuckled. "I'll drink to that." Laughter filled the room, warm and easy. Evelyn looked around the table, realizing she was surrounded by something better than the family she'd lost, people who respected her, not her money. She'd used part of her settlement to establish a scholarship for young people studying agriculture and a fund for seniors facing financial abuse from family. The rest she'd placed in a trust for local charities, keeping just enough for her retirement and the occasional trip she and Robert had always dreamed of taking. 3 weeks earlier, she'd received a letter from Adam. No return address, postmarked from Ohio. He wrote briefly, an apology, a plea for reconciliation. She'd thought about it for days before responding. "Adam, I will always love the little boy who picked wildflowers for his mother. But that boy grew into a man who tried to destroy me for money. I've forgiven you, but I can't trust you again. I hope you've learned to live with integrity. Take care of yourself." She mailed it without including her address. Some bridges, once burned, should never be rebuilt. But life always leaves room to build new ones. That Thanksgiving night, as her guests left and the house grew quiet, Walter lingered on the porch. "Evelyn," he said, "you know you've changed lives with what you did, right?" She frowned. "What do you mean?" "You showed people that older folks don't have to be victims. That family doesn't mean surrendering your dignity. You stood up, and people noticed." Evelyn looked out over her land, the small garden, the bird feeders alive with color, the horizon tinged with gold. I didn't set out to change anyone, she said softly. I just refuse to be stolen from. Sometimes, that's all it takes. Later, as she sat beneath the stars, her phone buzzed with a message from her neighbor's granddaughter, a young woman who'd often visited to hear Evelyn's stories. Mrs. Henderson, my boyfriend tried to pressure me into giving him money for his business. I remembered what you went through and told him no. He didn't like it, but I stood my ground. Thank you for teaching me that it's okay to protect what's mine. Evelyn smiled and typed back. Good for you, sweetheart. Never apologize for protecting what you've earned. As she set the phone down, she watched the night sky shimmer above her fields. Adam had tried to break her, but instead, he'd taught her just how strong she was. The old farm was gone, but what it had built in her, the grit, the independence, the refusal to be anyone's victim, would last forever. Some inheritances aren't measured in money. They're measured in strength. And that, Evelyn Henderson thought, no one, not even family, could ever steal.